So DJI Mini 3 Pro versus the iPhone 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. Well, the differences couldn't be bigger, but this has definitely been interesting. So these two devices are completely different except for two things. Both can shoot in 4K 60 and both can take raw photos. But in today's video, I'm gonna focus on the video part. Now with the drone, you can get the most amazing shots from above, but you can also do that with the phone, just not as high. And in most scenarios, it will look much better if you fly your drone close to the ground or close to objects or subjects, which means we will have some advantages when we are using the phone. Now, this entire sequence was shot entirely on the iPhone 13 and 14 Pro Max with the help of this gimbal, the RobHK M6. And this gimbal has something interesting which makes shooting these type of videos much easier and much more convenient than we used to do before. So I'm gonna come back to that feature in a sec. Not everyone has a budget to buy a drone, and not everyone is interested in buying a drone. And maybe you don't want to invest in a drone because you're unsure of whether or not it will be used enough. Or maybe it's above your budget, so we all have our reasons to get one as well as not. And depending on where you travel and what you want to film in that location, some area has a no-fly zone, which means you'll risk a fine up to $5,000. And getting a permit to fly in that location can both be hard and frustrating, especially if you don't know the process. But it doesn't mean you can't get the shots you're after, you just have to think differently. So in today's video, I will show you a behind the scenes of how I shot this sequence with my iPhone 13 Pro Max and my wife's 14 Pro Max and the new RobHK M6 gimbal. But I'm also gonna put my phone up against the Mini 3 Pro and try to replicate the exact same shots with the Mini 3 Pro, which I take on the phones, and see if, if the result is more or less the same, and if I can achieve that typical drone look by using a smartphone and a gimbal. Now starting with the first shot here, I used the Insta360 3-meter carbon fiber selfie stick and extended it as far as it could go. And to make the shot as stable as possible, I also put the gimbal in lock mode and walked in a straight line. And with this gimbal, you can also get a remote controller, which I used with most of the shots to add that drone gimbal tilt effect. So having the camera elevated 3 meters up, it can be hard to see the exact movement of the gimbal, especially when shooting in sunlight. So to capture these shots, the remote controller was definitely a warm welcome. Now for this next shot, I put the gimbal in pan follow mode and slightly adjusted the rotation, or slightly rotated the selfie stick to get a small subtle pan effect. And for this next clip, I wanted to have that pan shot, which gave the impression of a drone tracking or locking on to the building as I moved around. And this shot turned out amazing and is one of my favorite shots from this sequence. Now, I also want to have a shot where I gave the impression of a drone flying close to the ground, then rising to reveal the scene. For this, I extended the selfie stick as far as it would go, and since I didn't want to have any sideways movement, I also put the gimbal in lock mode to keep it as steady as possible. Now, starting with the camera close to the ground here will also illustrate a higher speed, even though you're moving quite slow. And as I get close to the object, I also push the camera as high as I could. But here it's really important that you also try to keep a consistent speed as you push it up. Otherwise the footage might look a little bit jerky. And for these type of shots, you could also add some speed ramping if you want to make it look a little bit cooler, or you can just slow it down if you record in 4K 60 and make it look super cinematic. Now let's talk about the amazing feature of this gimbal, and this is something that I really enjoy. It's the first time that I had a gimbal with something like this, so I really appreciate that this gimbal can do that because it makes my process when shooting a whole lot easier. So this gimbal comes with a removable AI tracking camera, and this helps you keep the subject or object in frame as you move. And when you're using a 3-meter selfie stick to fake some drone shots, this is quite a handy tool to have. So let's take a look at this shot, for example. Here I want to record my wife as smoothly as possible when she's moving towards the ruins. And this is definitely a tricky challenge when I have the camera 3 meters up. I also struggle to see the screen and the exact movement of the gimbal's pan and tilt. With the AI tracking, I could just tap and drag a box around my wife, hit record and start moving. The AI feature of this is amazing. It did a really good job and I'm quite surprised with how good the shot turned out. Even though my box drawing skills were a bit off and the box turned out to be a little bit big, with some adjustments and color correction to this and just adding a little bit of slow motion to it and some speed ramping, wow, this looks amazing. Now let's change the location and selfie stick. So this time I'm using a light stand, which is fairly cheap compared to the 3 meter carbon fiber selfie stick from Insta360, which is actually designed to hold smaller cameras and not a gimbal. Now the pros with the Insta360 selfie stick though is that it's compact and fits in your backpack without taking up much space. Now for the first shot here, I want to have another push forward. So I'm extending the light stand as far as it goes and put the gimbal in lock mode. Then I start to walk in a straight line towards the bunkers as I use the tilt up button on the controller, which I placed on the bottom of the stand with some Velcro. Now when I do these fake drone shots, whether this is with a smartphone, an action camera, or if it's an actual drone, I always do multiple takes. I try to mix up with different lenses and slightly change the angle. This gives me more footage to select from when I later edit the video. Now for the next one here, I'm doing the same movement I did in the previous location where I put the gimbal in lock mode and start with the camera low to the ground. But here I also push the camera up immediately when I started walking to get a slightly different look. I also wanted to have some shots from the area around me just to add to the sequence and to show the viewer a little bit more of the location I'm shooting at, as well as having more to choose from in edit. For this, I wanted to have more movement, illustrating a drone flying sideways, panning and tilting to the left or right. So for this shot here, I put the gimbal in lock mode and I used the AI tracking to track the bench in the middle. And again, I was amazed by the result. It looks just like a drone. Now, when I'm out shooting videos like this to make a cinematic sequence, I also like to have music and sound effects which can drive the video. Sometimes you come back home and you watch your footage and you wish they were just a tiny bit better, maybe a little bit more professional. But music and sound effects can actually compensate for those okay shots. Most of us have probably watched a video with awful quality and bad framing, but the overall story of the video was engaging. The same goes for music and sound effects. Epidemic Sound has more than 40,000 tracks to choose from and 90,000 sound effects, and to be honest, finding the right track is as easy as tapping the record button. But you're not limited there. If you find a track with vocals which you don't really want and you wish there was a way to remove it, you can also download all the individual stems, which gives you the ability to remove the vocals once you add the music into post. And searching for music and sound effects is actually pretty easy. You don't have to go by theme or genre, you can just type in the sentence you want. So if you want some ocean war music, or if you want something else, a specific sound effect like seagulls, something like that, you just type it in and you have it. But you can also try for yourself completely free for 30 days with the link in the description. After all, it's completely free, so you have nothing to lose. So now that we have some amazing music and sound effects for the video, we can move over to the next location. And this is where I really got the feel of how good this AI tracking really is. For this shot here, I was tracking the large rock in the center of the frame here and moved it in a straight line, as well as pushing the tilt upwards on the remote controller. And the result of this was a fake panning drone shot with a tilt up with literally no effort. Nothing, just like flying a drone. I also used the AI tracking for some of the other shots here as well, and I must say I am pretty impressed. Definitely gives me a huge reason to get out there and shoot more with my smartphone and take the Hohem M6 with me, because it has this amazing AI tracking, which definitely it makes a huge difference when using a gimbal. Now, finishing up here before taking off with the Mini 3 Pro, for the last 2 shots here, I repeated the same movement as before, having the gimbal in lock mode and walking as steady as possible across the bridge. And also ending the last clip here with a pan tilt shot. But here you can also see the effects of the tilt upwards, which makes the shot look much better. So to be able to capture all these shots, the remote controller has been essential, especially when the gimbal and the camera is 3 meters up in the air. But all in all, I'm extremely satisfied with the experience that I had using these devices and how good the Hohem M6 actually is. Believe it or not, this is the first time that I'm actually excited about using a gimbal, and it's because of this removable AI camera here, which also has built-in lights. But the big question is, how has the iPhone 13 Pro and 14 Pro Max held up to the Mini 3 Pro, and is there a big difference there in the movement? Now, as for the drone shots, I try to replicate them as good as possible with the Mini 3 Pro, but unfortunately, in some locations, I was not able to fly due to high gusts and a lot of people. But let's take a look at the shots I managed to pull off. The drone shots versus the phone shots were pretty equal if you ask me. The things you can achieve with a gimbal like this, a stick, and your phone is pretty insane with the new technology that we have now. Links to all the gear I've been using is down in the description, along with the color grading, which you've seen in this video. It's my Signature LUTs. Also the free cheat sheets for the Mini 3 Pro, essential if you have a drone, and the Hohem M6 if you want to test that out. It's down in the description. Just make sure to grab the remote controller as well. It will make your life much easier and your videos will look much more professional without cropping in and making that tedious adjustment in post. So that wraps it up. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video, that you found some value in the shots and the behind the scenes. If you did, don't forget to drop a like. And also, if you're brand new to this channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That would be really appreciated. And until next time, take care, and I will see you in the next one.